Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Council and Successor Agency to the Redevelopment Agency meeting of Tuesday, November 2nd, 2021. I now call the meeting to order. Okay, so we've got a real treat tonight for our national anthem. It will be sung by Moxie Ann Biggs. So Moxie Ann is probably, with all respect to everybody who sings the national anthem, and not to put too much pressure on her, but she's probably one of the very best people to sing the national anthem. The first time I ever heard her sing the national anthem was in 2017 when we had our 4th of July event, and she knocked it out of the park. And then in 2019, she not only sang the national anthem, but she opened for the Tijuana Dogs at our July 3rd event on Manuel Chavez's birthday. And in between, she sung the national anthem a few times at Costa Mesa Day at the fair. So it's with my great pleasure and delight to introduce Moxie Ann to sing the national anthem. Please stand, and then remain standing, and Councilmember Harper is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Thank you.
Thank you, Moxie Ann. And I just want to tell everybody that Moxie Ann has a group. It's Heartless the Duo, and they're a band that's a tribute band to Heart, and you can find them on Instagram. So you follow them on Instagram. So now we're also honored to have a great community leader for our moment of solemn expression from Trellis, my good friend, and he's in the house, Ian Stevenson. It's wonderful to have you, Pastor Stevenson. Please lead us in a moment of solemn expression.
Okay, thank you. It's an honor to be here and open up our meeting tonight with prayer. So let's bow our heads and just give God a little space here tonight. God, we just pause before this meeting begins to make room for you. God, would you just give wisdom to our council as they discuss and work through things tonight, Lord. I pray even for the community members that may speak and share. God, you would just guide them, that this meeting tonight would really help improve and make our city better. God, we're so thankful for this city that we get to live in. We're thankful for the leadership that you've brought here. And God, we're thankful for our state, for our nation. We are so grateful. And we're mindful, God, that we need you in the middle of all this. We need you to give us insights above and beyond maybe what we have on our own. So I just thank you for our city staff as well, God, for each one of them that kind of walk out the results of these meetings. And God, we pray for your blessing on them and on this council, and for you to really lead this time tonight. And I pray these things, God, in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you very much, Pastor Stevenson. I appreciate it. Great words. Madam Clerk, will you please do the roll call?
Councilmember Chavez. Here. Councilmember Gameros. Present. Councilmember Harlan. Here. Councilmember Harper. Councilmember Reynolds. Mayor Pro Tem Marr. Here. Mayor Stevens.
Here.
Thank you.
City Attorney, do you have a closed session report?
No reportable action was taken in closed session. The council gave direction.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we have two presentations tonight. The first is for Native American Heritage Month. November is Native American Heritage Month. This month we celebrate the positive significance Native people have made in this country, but also not forgetting the turbulent past and current mistreatment of Native communities who continue to fight for equality, recognition, and peace. There are over 600 tribes in the United States. Each tribe has its own language, culture, stories, and beliefs. And so I signed a proclamation, and here are some of the excerpts of the proclamation. In 1990, President George W. Bush designated November as National American Indian Heritage Month. The people indigenous to Costa Mesa settled on the mesa near the banks of the Santa Ana River. They considered themselves keepers of Mother Earth and were dependent on their surroundings, using what was readily available in nature for food, clothing, and shelter. Today, the descendants of the indigenous people of this area still live throughout the county of Orange. During this month of November, our city honors our Native people and recognizes their continued contributions to the community. Therefore, I proclaim November 2021 as Native American Heritage Month and encourage all Costa Mesa residents to join in this observance. Okay, then the second presentation and proclamation relates to Movember. I guess it's pronounced Movember and not Movember, although it looks like both. Movember. Movember is also known as No Shave November, which you might notice the stubble. See, I'm recognizing this and observing it. It is an annual event where we let our mustaches and beards grow freely to raise awareness of men's health issues, specifically cancer, mental health, and suicide prevention. The focus of Movember is to reduce the number of preventable deaths and to reduce the number of men dying prematurely by 25% by the year 2030. So again, I signed a proclamation, and here's some excerpts. 1 in 7 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in his lifetime. Testicular cancer is the most common cancer in males between the ages of 15 and 32. 87 men in the United States die by suicide every day. The city of Costa Mesa is committed to raising awareness about men's health issues and encouraging residents to talk about their mental health and commit to a stigma-free culture. I urge all residents of Costa Mesa to join in the movement to change the face of men's health in our community and the world. And that's also why we're wearing these blue ribbons, as you can see. Okay, so those are our two proclamations and presentations. Now it's time to open up the floor to public comments. Public comments are for items that are not on the agenda. Each member of the public who wishes to speak gets 3 minutes. When they're done with 3 minutes, there's no grace period. Their mic gets cut off. You get a warning after 2 minutes, so you know you've got 1 more minute to go. If you're on Zoom and you wish to speak, you can indicate and get in the queue by pressing *9 or the hand raise function. And then when it's time for you to speak, go off mute or do the *6. So, ma'am, Ms. Martin, you have the floor.
Thank you. 54-year resident of Costa Mesa. I would like to announce that Charles Marone, author of Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, is going to be here November the 19th. He will be working with city staff for most of the day. And then in the evening, Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets is going to host a reception for Chuck at the Norma Herzog Center. So I urge everyone within earshot to attend that wonderful event. I also brought some extras of a door hanger that Mark Vukskovich, a member of Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets, put together. Many of us are going to be walking our neighborhoods and hanging these door hangers. They include a QR code that, when scanned by your phone, will show every single bike rack in Costa Mesa. So I brought some for city staff to distribute to everyone on the dais. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, you have the floor.
Mayor Steffens and City Council members, thank you for inviting me and being here. It's been a pleasure. My name is Frank Gutierrez. I come here in representation of the Cultural Arts Committee of the City of Costa Mesa, the Arts. And I am at this point probably the senior member because I've been there, I think, already almost 16 years, of which I've been the chairperson. I was the chairperson from 2008 to 2016. Andrea Marr, of course, our council member, was there. Before I was chairperson, before she became chairperson, and just to give you a little bit of the history of what we are there. And I'm currently the vice chair. Charlene Aschendorf is the chair at this point. And we have a fantastic team with her leading and having some of our senior people like myself there to give the new generation a direction of what we've done for the last 16, 17 years, which I consider really important as I look at committees and we look at the senior people like ourselves, that we become integral parts of committees in a certain way, that we don't just, kind of like goodbye. We should invite them to be part of our community in one way or another because they bring a lot to our community. Apart from that, I've been responsible, of course, for the utility box program the first 5 years. Not only was I responsible for the boxes, we manufactured the boxes, we install, we design the boxes, and of course, we continue with over 67 boxes now for the City of the Arts, which I think has been a very successful program and liked by a lot of the people in the community. I've been part of the West Side business community for now over 28 years. I was 26 years old when I arrived, and years have gone by fast, but it's been a fantastic ride here in a beautiful city. Why is the Cultural Arts Committee so important for this city, and not just this city, but any city? And I could say that we could talk about why the value of art is important, but I could tell you that since I do business with Palm Desert, and I've been in Aspen, and I've been in places that like Park City, and I see the effects of the value of art and what art brings to those cities and the community it develops, I think it's kind of like, well, we would say that it is an important aspect, by no means, because it gives us the ability to bring a combination of people of all levels for all people to enjoy and also to become part of the community in certain aspects. So definitely, when we look at those contrasts, we look at that, and if we see our city as the city of the arts, And I see now with the support that we have from the mayor, the support we have from the committee, from the decisions that, have been taken, like, giving us now 5% of the possible sales of cannabis, by now positioning we're going to be hiring the city specialist. And I think now you could say that we are really a city of the arts with the components that gives the budget and the direction to move forward. Those are just really positive things that I think are really good. With that in mind,
Okay, hold on one second. I'm sorry to do this to you, but there's something going wrong. You've done your 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, okay.
It's really great what you said, but I got to play by the rules.
No, thank
So you
you.
had your 3 minutes, and then I don't know if we have anybody else, but we need to fix. You should have got a 1 minute warning, and then
problem.
you would have been cut off. But now I have to verbally cut you off, which is awkward, but I'm
No
willing to
problem.
do it. It's my job.
Thank
But
you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So do we have anybody else in the chambers that wishes to address us? Oh. Well, just let's. Okay, I understand your point, but do we have anybody else on Zoom?
If anybody'd like to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand. Mr. Mayor, we have none.
All right, close public comment. Now let's hear from the council. First up from District 6, Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Costa Mesa. Happy post-Halloween, everyone. I hope everybody had a fun and safe holiday. From what I could tell on my block, as is the case every year, it's the most festive occasion. I can't even count how many kids and parents were out there. Lots of candy wrappers left around, but a great neighborhood event. A few of my neighbors put together a fantastic haunted maze. And I could tell by a lot of kids shrieking that it was a lot of fun. I just had to give one quick update. Last week I filled in at the Orange County Transportation Authority had a District 2, Supervisorial District 2 Mayor's Forum. And I just wanted to give a quick, hit some of the highlights from what OCTA presented. First of all, Measure M tax projections seem to be up. They reported at $13.2 billion for 2021, and we'll be receiving some of that funding directly. There are a number of capital improvement projects that are underway, Orange County streetcar, the I-5 South County improvements, and most importantly for us up here, the 405 widening. OCTA reported that they're about halfway complete with the project. Expected completion is October of 2023, and it includes 18 bridge replacements, 2 new lanes in each direction. I think 17 of the bridges have already been demolished, so they seem to be moving ahead at a pretty quick clip. There's also going to be a State Route 55 project between up to the 405 starting in 2022, which includes some additional lanes, expected completion of 2026. 2 other things of note, OCTA has tried to attract more riders for the bus system. It's dropped by about a third since pre-pandemic. So they've instituted a ride for free program for individuals under 18, and that's going to continue through the early part of 2022. I think they've already issued about 300,000 passes so far. And then also community college students get to ride for free as well. And then lastly, there's some funding opportunities in the queue. A number of grants that the OCTA is offering, including pavement management relief. Costa Mesa is going to get about $330,000 directly from that. There's some regional capacity grants and environmental cleanup. And then lastly, the state will be issuing some grant funding opportunities next fall. The active transportation planning grants are about $450 million. So we will definitely be keeping our eye on that, because I know we want to be implementing our ATP plan and getting our coordinator on board, so we'll have more work to do there. That's it for OCTA, and that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you very much. Next up from District 1 is Councilmember Donald Harper. Councilmember Harper.
Mayor Stevens,
You got it.
mostly some thank yous and a pickleball update, which I know you're dying to hear. First, I want to compliment Lori Ann and Carol Molina for their presentation on the last agenda item at the last meeting for 580 Anton. I think that it is hard to step out of what other cities are doing, but you laid out a really good PowerPoint presentation of the pitfalls of that project, and I really admire what you did. You made it really simple, and I think a lot of it, so I wanted to make that comment. Thank you, Chief Lawrence, for reaching out to me on our issue in Mesa Verde. I'm still talking to my neighbors. I know there's some data you're still going to get me, and we're going to probably meet with them, and I really appreciate that, and they're kind of addressing their concerns. I did this past week, the Economic Development Department, Dan and Jennifer met with me on the Colu software. It's the retail, it's trying to reinvigorate the retail in Costa Mesa, and they admirably spent an hour trying to convince me it's going to work, or it's the reason for it. I still don't like it, but I appreciate they're going to try and put some KPIs in and make sure it's productive. But I'd love to see that $255,000 go somewhere else. And the last thing I mentioned to Jason Minter on the way in there, I've got a group of 15 that plays pickleball at Tanninger Park every 2 weeks. They would love to see that become a pickleball court. It's an open, flat surface. I know Jason's working on it. You're all working on it. So they're very excited. Pickleball's becoming a big sport. I'll challenge anybody to a game of pickleball up here. I'll play pickleball against you if you want. I'll make a donation to your charity if you can beat me.
All right.
I'm not that good. I just want to.
How much?
I'm all good. That's all. Thank you.
That's great. We're definitely going to do that. First time at Tanninger Park, we'll play pickleball. From District 5, Councilmember Arliss Reynolds.
Great. I've never played pickleball, but you're on. That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. Maybe a Thanksgiving activity. A few updates. So first I wanted to thank our transportation staff for the various traffic calming projects that we have. We spend a lot of time because the staff reports come in front of us for the very large projects, but we've got a number of sort of small interventions. We've got a number of small interventions in different neighborhoods aimed at slowing traffic through neighborhoods in direct response to a lot of feedback we get from the community on cars moving too fast for their street or people feeling uncomfortable walking down their street because of those speeds. So I want to thank staff for trying out some different strategies for traffic calming. Very excited about that, and I appreciate the sort of pre and post measurements to see how those projects have slowed vehicles and made our streets safer. Also appreciate the education that we continue to share with the community and sort of how these strategies work, what the idea is behind them, and then, really looking at the data in terms of how they work. So thank you for that. I'm very excited about AB 43, which recently passed at the state level, which gives us a lot more local control in setting speed limits. So AB 43 gives us a lot more local control that we didn't have in setting speed limits in school zones, and that's an area where we've heard a lot of concerns in terms of vehicle speed. So I'm really interested in sort of pursuing what options we have there to address speeding concerns. So thank you for all of that work, and I do want to give thanks to the Costa Mesa Alliance for Better Streets as well, a growing community group that's helping helping community members who express concern about safe streets and who are working to sort of build coalitions and bring new ideas and work directly with their staff. I think we have a really good partnership on a project going on right now where we've been able to leverage this community group to help with a lot of the education and feedback collecting for our project. So thank you to all of those community members. Also, it feels like a month ago now, but we had a really good brainstorm. I want to thank our Director of Parks and Community Services, Jason Minter, and Constituent Services, Alex Gonzalez, who had a really great creative brainstorm with myself and Councilmember Chavez on how the heck do we build more green space in Westside Costa Mesa, where we know there's sort of lack of access to parks, but we don't have a lot of land to build on. So I just want to say I really enjoyed the brainstorm we have, and I really appreciate kind of the continued research on different creative options we have. I'm really excited about some of those options, so you've certainly got my support there. We, I think last week, got a request from a community member on reestablishing a human relations committee. I haven't had a chance to chat with our city manager about that, but just wanted to say publicly that I'm very supportive of that, and I think it's a really good timing as we're continuing to come out of COVID, and aligns well with our sort of values of inclusivity and our goals around increased community engagement and better representation, and just good timing in general to have a group that's specifically focused on human relations and kind of bringing community together again as we come out of COVID. So really appreciate that request from our community, and I'm certainly supportive of it. And Councilmember Harper reminded me of something I was interested in a while ago. I can't believe it's already Christmas season, but I do hope that I think everyone's getting advice to buy their Christmas gifts now because there's supply chain issues. But I really want to make sure that we're pushing out information to encourage people to buy local. No supply chain issues. Well, fewer supply chain issues if you're buying local. And we really, as we've discussed in this dais before, we really want to try to keep those tax dollars internal. So whatever we can do through our existing sort of campaigns and back initiative to push out messaging to buy local for Christmas, which is just around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Chavez from District 4.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens, and thank you those in the audience and those watching from home. Only one thing today. As you may have noticed this past couple comments, I'm really interested in redistricting, not only in Costa Mesa, but other nearby districts. And I really want to highlight something important for Costa Mesa. The County of Orange today and the County Board of Supervisors had their first public hearing on new district maps. 2 of the 3 maps they're going with cut Costa Mesa in half. I'm just letting everyone know, and I like to remind the city manager, perhaps we should write a letter to the County of Orange encouraging them to not separate Costa Mesa. I think one of the things that makes us so great in Costa Mesa is that we're eclectic, is that we have different pockets that have different personalities, but we're ultimately all Costa Mesa. And I think it'd be a disservice for us to not voice our opinion as a council on this critical junction, because having worked in the County of Orange, I see the amount of money that goes through that board, and it would be a real shame for us to lose proper representation because we were caught sleeping when the maps were being drawn and we're cut in half. So my ask to the manager is to maybe put that on the next council meeting agenda. And to the public, if you want to voice your concern about that, please go to the county website, ocgov.com, go on their redistricting tab, and make your comments known, because I don't know why they're doing it, I don't know why they're considering it, but it could happen, and that frightens me. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Chavez. From District 2, Councilmember Gameros, Lauren Gameros. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a brief summary this evening. I did get to spend this Halloween with my children running around trying to get candy, and it was really great to see the community out there and engaged. I hope that everyone had a wonderful Halloween. I do want to say that as the days get shorter, the days also get colder, and we need to consider our homeless population. They get cold just like you do. And if you have any jackets or warm clothing that maybe you're not going to need, our homeless shelter would be more than happy to receive them and help out those in need who are going to be left out in the cold. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Please be aware of that. That's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mayor Pro Tem Andrea Marr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Martin, thank you for reminding us about the Strong Towns event. I had that on my list and I was going to announce it, but I'm very, very excited to see Mr. Marone again. If you haven't read Confessions of a Recovering Engineer, it's a good read. I did want to check in on the status of a couple of our capital improvement projects. So, now that I live in Mesa Del Mar, I make the T-Winkle lap at least once a day with the dog, and have seen the ponds now in various states over the course of the last 9 months. And so we have the ponds at T-Winkle and also the skate park expansion that were both slated. And just when you get a chance, Mr. Sethraman, I'd love an update on kind of where those stand and, remaining budget and all that other fun stuff. Along with a couple of other members of council, I had the opportunity to attend the opening of the OCC Student Center. So really exciting to see how that campus has changed just over the last 10 years. If you're not aware, the new Student Center has a new restaurant that members of the public can attend where students are practicing all the things they're learning in the culinary arts and hospitality. And then honestly, what I think is the coolest about it is now OCC has a real quad. It faces the rest of the campus. There's this beautiful big open space. They're so excited to activate it and bring the community in. And that was the thing I heard over and over and over again during the opening was the community as this just incredibly fundamental part of what makes OCC great, and that integration of the college within the community. So really exciting to see more things happen there. And as we open up sort of post-COVID, excited to spend more time at OCC. Thank you for the comment on redistricting, Councilmember Chavez. So the next deadline that the community should be aware of is November 4th. So what is that, Thursday? That's the last chance to submit maps for consideration at our next public hearing. So it could be a map. It could be something as simple as, keep this community together. The two things that we heard from the demographer that stood out the most for me is this interest in what are these contiguous communities that should stay together as part of this redistricting effort? And then what are sort of the natural barriers between communities that we can identify so that we do this in the way that kind of feels the most logical for the people who live here. Obviously, splitting Costa Mesa in two does not feel logical at all, and I'm not quite sure how that's even legal. But anyway, so if you have thoughts on the maps, if you want to draw a map, if you want to draw a map in crayon, if you just want to say keep all of Mesa Del Mar together, you can pretty much do whatever you want and send it to the email that's listed on our website. It's super easy to find this information. If you go to the city's website under hot topics, there's only 2 items and one of them is redistricting, and everything you need to know is there. And that's all I had for today. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to start with redistricting, and Councilmember Chavez, you were right on point, so much so that I sent that letter yesterday. We got a request from our supervisor that she needed it by today. And so thank you to Alex Gonzalez, our chief of staff, who jumped right on that and got a draft to me that was in very good shape. And I added a paragraph, and he corrected my spelling, and we got it off to the board, to the chairman of the board and the board yesterday. So great minds think alike. I went to with Councilmember Chavez and Mayor Pro Tem Marr, as she mentioned, to the Orange Coast College Center, and that is a tremendous place, and it's going to provide, so much joy and so much comfort to those students, and that whole area is just terrific. And I was going to mention that our chief, fire chief, Chief Stefano, used to play defensive end for the Pirates, the OCC Pirates, but I wasn't able to work that into my speech, but I have a little more luxury of time now. fire chief's athletic career, both baseball and football, and learn more about Chief Lawrence, you should look at the podcast, Costa Mesa Now podcast. You can also learn about Lauren Gameros, who has a great spot in the podcast. Anyway, moving on. Councilmember Chavez and Councilmember Harlan and I went to the opening of another factory of the electric bike company on Placentia over in the Hurley area. And boy, they're really expanding. And it was great to see that. We were able to participate in their opening and help them cut that ribbon. And I was also very happy that Chief Lawrence was there. Because, of course, one of the issues with electric bikes, it's a wonderful thing for our environment to keep people out of, get people out of their cars and ride bikes, and it provides a lot of opportunity to do that. But we as a city then need to respond to that stimulus by providing education on how to do so safely, and also provide streets and pathways so that folks can ride those electric bikes and just pedal bikes safely and also be pedestrians. On Thursday, day after tomorrow, we're having and I hope everybody comes to this. It's on November 4th at 10 o'clock, right over here at Roger Neth Park, and it's going to be great. Chief's going to be there. We have a whole plan for how a run of show and what we're going to do, and we're really going to kick this park off right. And it's never going to be the same. It's going to, and he's a District 3 resident, and it's going to be a great time. So, and also, I want to just recognize all the veterans. Before we have our next meeting, we'll have Veterans Day on November 11th. And there's various ways you can celebrate that. So, but no matter what, think of or thank a veteran on November 11th. And then finally, we're going to adjourn the meeting for Oscar Santoyo. And I have some remarks that I'm going to read at that time. He was the first executive director of SOY, Save Our Youth, and he died prematurely within the last week. And so at the end of the meeting, I'll have some remarks to read about him. So that's all I have in terms of my comments. Now we'll go to a city manager report by Ms. Farrell Harrison.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, honorable council members, and members of the public. Just have a few items to update you on this evening. First, I wanted to echo the council's support for Movember, and just to take this moment to thank you for your leadership in recognizing the importance of this month. Other than skin cancer, prostate cancer is the most common cancer in American men, and the American Cancer Society's estimates for prostate cancer in the United States for just this year, just 1 year, are that about 250,000 new cases of prostate cancer will be diagnosed, and there will be about 34,000 deaths. Prostate cancer is something that's a personal interest to me. My husband and I went through a prostate cancer journey about 10 years ago, and luckily everything worked out well, and he is a cancer survivor, and he's been cancer-free since then. But I can't stress the importance of PSA testing enough, and making sure that you're getting your regular and your annual checkups. Early detection is key, and we recently had a very dear friend that just at the age of 63 passed away from bone cancer resulting from prostate cancer. And so it's something that can be deadly if not detected early. And I'm fortunate that we were able to have that early detection. And so it's something that we need to be mindful of and spread more awareness about. And it's not something that people talk about very often. So I wanted to share that personal journey and the ability to survive and thrive if there is early detection. We just can't stress that enough. So thank you. We're going to see, you'll be seeing some of our police personnel as well, sporting beards and mustaches, and members of the city team. And so just know that we're doing that all in solidarity and support of this important awareness month. I wanted to mention a little bit about the COVID-19 emergency and the continuation of the emergency declaration. We've had some questions from members of the public about the emergency declaration. When will it be lifted? When will some of the restrictions be removed? So I just wanted to give an update on where we stand with COVID-19. Right now, the pandemic is still here. It's very present for us, especially. Orange County reported a 900 COVID case increase over the last 3-day period, and more than 200 people are still in hospitals infected with COVID in Orange County. Only 73% of the state is fully vaccinated. That's a good number relative to other states, but here in Costa Mesa, we have not hit that statewide average. We're at 72%, so we're inching a little below that and still continue to promote vaccination as one of the most important tools to get us out of the pandemic. I'll share with you that from a city staff standpoint, 53% of our city employees are vaccinated. It's very important that we continue our safety precautions with our personnel, just given the fact that just a little less than half are not vaccinated. And so we will continue all of our precautions throughout city facilities to make sure that we're safe and that we're able to provide services to the public. With the back to school and children being in school in person and many not being able to be vaccinated, I think Pfizer was just approved for ages 5 to 11 this week. But up until now, that has not been the case. And we have had not just members of the public, but even members of city staff that have become ill because of contraction that's happened of the disease among their children. And so it still continues to be prevalent for us. Just this week, there's an entire division that is out of work this week because of one member testing positive and the others having to quarantine. And we've had about over 100 of our employees test positive during the time of the pandemic. Our commitment is to serve the public, to be safe as we're doing it, to protect each other, to protect you. And so we're not at a point where we would lift the emergency declaration. The county's emergency declaration is still in place. The state's emergency declaration is still in place, and so is that of the federal government. And we continue to use American Rescue Plan funds to kind of find our way through this time. So I would strongly recommend for those of you that are vaccinated to please look into getting the booster as immunization starts to wear off so that we don't have a regression. Please go to www.othina.com and schedule for a booster. And if you have not yet been vaccinated, consider doing so. And of course, we always have information regarding that as well. And so hopefully that helps to shed some light on the emergency and where we stand. From our standpoint, there's an enormous amount of contact tracing and work that still remains around that issue, and also with the White House's requirements for weekly testing, which has not yet been implemented. There'll be a lot of effort around that if that is the case. Wanted to also echo the comments about our exciting event coming up this Thursday for the Roger Neth Park naming ceremony. Really excited about that, and just happy that we have the ability to do this and to recognize former chiefs while they're still with us. And so please join us at 10 a.m. right next door to the police headquarters. And then finally, I just wanted to congratulate Raja's team for receiving one of the most prestigious awards that you can get in the field of engineering. The Engineering News Record is a Californian magazine. Last week presented our team with the Donald Dungan Library and Norma Herzog Center with the Best Cultural Project in Southern California Award. And that, I'll repeat that again, Best Cultural Project in Southern California. It's an incredible achievement in the industry. Is kind of known as the gold, the Emmy, the Academy Award, if you will, for projects. And so very happy for that. And that's all I have.
Good way to end it. Okay, so City Attorney Barlow, for your report, try to end it in a way where we can clap.
Well, I'll make it short then. Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I do want to report that we were successful today in having the federal court grant a motion for summary judgment in the Garten versus Costa Mesa case involving search. All of the state claims are going to be remanded to state court. All of the federal claims have been dismissed. That's a very good outcome. We're very happy about it, and I'll get you a full report shortly.
Okay, that's great. So then we get to clap about the consent calendar next. So all matters under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be acted upon in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the city council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and/or removed from the consent calendar discussion. Now today, we may or may not have an item to be removed, but Councilmember Chavez needs to recuse himself from one of the items and have that noted on the record. So Councilmember Chavez, you have the floor for that purpose.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens. I will be recusing myself from consent calendar number 7, the question of Hamilton Avenue, Victoria Street Bridge, and Santa Avenue Bridge to County Highways by County of Orange, as I cover OCTA in my job and have worked this on the county side. Thank you.
All right, well done. So anyway, Madam Clerk, then, apart from that recusal, which will be noted on the record, are there any items that the public, staff, or council has asked to be pulled from the consent calendar agenda?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, wonderful. Well, then I'll entertain a motion. Councilmember Chavez.
Move consent calendar.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Harper. Wonderful, and let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, well done, everyone. Now, I'm going to make a motion because it's 6:46. We have a public hearing item that's been noticed for 7 o'clock. We have a new business item. So what I'd like to do is move to reorder the meeting, take the new business item first so we can timely hear the public hearing item. Do I have a second on that one? Okay, that's my motion. Second by Chavez. Call for the question.
Councilmember Harper, please. Oh. Motion carries 7-0.
Wonderful, thank you, council. So, Madam Clerk, would you please read the title for new business item number 1?
This is adoption of an urgency ordinance to prohibit the operation of short-term rentals within the city of Costa Mesa with the exception of home sharing. An urgency ordinance entitled, an urgency ordinance of the City Council of the City of Costa Mesa, California, prohibiting the operation of short-term rentals in all areas of the city of Costa Mesa. Thank you. Presentation by Ms. Lee.
Ms. Lee, you have the floor. Wherever you are. There you are. Down there. See it.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The item before you this evening is the adoption of an urgency ordinance pertaining to short-term rentals. In the way of background, in 2020, at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, the city experienced an increase in short-term rentals-related complaints. Those complaints were primarily related to disruptive parties and the noise and parking impacts associated with those parties. In response, in December 2020, the City Council adopted a moratorium prohibiting short-term rentals with the exception of home sharing. That moratorium expires on November 10th, 2021. California remains in a state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and the state has also declared a housing crisis and adopted its own urgency ordinance, referred to as Senate Bill 60, that increases the maximum fines for short-term rental violations of a local ordinance. Also, on September 27th, 2021, and at its goal-setting retreat, the council identified establishment of a short-term rental permitting system as a future staff work effort pending staff's completion of the council's more immediate housing objectives, which are the inclusionary housing ordinance, motel conversions, housing committee, and completion of the state-required housing element. Considering the council's immediate housing priorities, the state housing crisis, and the ongoing pandemic, Staff is recommending adoption of an urgency ordinance prohibiting short-term rentals except for home sharing, and this approach is consistent with the previously adopted moratorium. The city has experienced a substantial decrease in the number of short-term rental-related complaints since the moratorium, and staff will continue to use civil citations with the increased maximum fines under Senate Bill 60, described in your staff report, as well as nuisance abatement and criminal prosecution when necessary to address complaints related to short-term rentals. With that, staff recommends this evening that the council find the urgency ordinance exempt from CEQA and introduce and adopt the urgency ordinance prohibiting short-term rentals except for home sharing. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Staff, thank you very much for the presentation. Looks like we have a question in the queue from Mayor Pro Tem Marr.
So I just want to confirm. Sorry, I keep forgetting that I even have this on. That's how used to the mask I am. I just want to confirm in terms of next steps, we are shooting towards having an ordinance on the books. We've talked about a couple of those components. This gives you another year to get there, but we had set some sense of timeline during our strategic planning session. So can you talk a little bit about what next year looks like?
Yes, there's no specific timeline included in the urgency ordinance. It's a response to the state housing crisis as well as the pandemic. But our intentions from a timing perspective, as outlined as part of the council priorities discussion, is to finish up the council's top priorities identified for the next 6 months, and then to immediately begin on some permanent regulations that have to do with the permitting system for short-term rentals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do any other council members have questions? I don't see any in the queue. Okay, we'll open up this item for public comment. I don't see anybody. Oh, here we go. We have someone in the chambers that wishes to speak on this, which is terrific. Okay, ma'am, you have the floor.
I have lived in my College Park home for 51 years. And most of those years, my neighbors became friends. We would have block parties and generally a wonderful environment. Around 4 years ago, I believe it was, my memory is turning a little bit shitty these days, the house behind us, directly adjacent to our backyard, became a short-term rental. And the parties started Thursday, Friday, Saturday, into Sunday morning. Wild Animal House crazy parties. On several occasions, when it first started, I would walk over to the house and knock on the door and ask to speak to the person who was renting. And very often, no one knew. And quite often, the house was filled with 20, 30 plus people. I ranted and raved on Facebook until finally Mayor Pro Tem Marr urged me just to call the police, which I started doing. I was calling the police on this animal house every week. I was so tempted actually to turn on my garden hose and let him have it from our backyard, but I know that would be assault and battery. Finally, last year, after the animal house continued into the COVID time, and I was telling my husband, oh, these are super spreaders. Finally, last year, you, council, you put a moratorium, and the parties stopped. Now the house is rented, usually up to a month and a half to 2. I see cars parked in front of the home every week. And I urge you to vote yes to continue the moratorium on the animal house. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, very much. I don't see anybody else in the chambers that wishes to speak on this item. How about on Zoom, Madam Clerk? Do we have anybody that wants to address the council on Zoom?
Yes, Daggert Allison, please.
Hello.
Yes, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Yes, I would just like to give a other side of the coin on this issue. And I am very much against party houses, 100%. My parents are retired, and they've kept their house in Costa Mesa as a way for them to be able to come back and visit friends and family, but they're currently living in Florida. And so initially it was a great situation because they have their property and their belongings at the house, and then we could store them away in the garage and in one of the rooms, and then rent it out so that maybe 2 or 3 months out of the year, it could be rented while they're back and forth between Florida and Costa Mesa. So that was great until the moratorium. And so since then, obviously, it has not been rented out, and they can still use it to come back. But I just wanted to give another side of the story. And also, I would like to let you know that we have understood all the issues of the parties, and we even saw that there were people trying to book the house for parties, and we started to implement a system such as a minimum of 7 days stay to keep parties from happening. Nobody who was under 25 was allowed to simply rent it. We would call them, make sure that they had multiple reviews on their profile, and with that, using that, we were able to cut out any sort of parties from happening. And our neighbors are actually very friendly with us and continue to be supportive. For instance, they'll call and check, hey, nobody's been around the house for a few weeks. Do you want me to go and check on it, or stop in and see if there's anything in the backyard? So I just wanted to give a different story, and I hope that a permitting system can be implemented so that my parents can have the income when they're not able to stay in Costa Mesa. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else on Zoom, Madam Clerk?
Yes, Austin Lynch.
Mr. Lynch, you have the floor.
Good evening, Austin Lynch, Organizing Director for Unite Here Local 11, the Hotel Workers Union. We've got hundreds of members that live and work in Costa Mesa, and they provide housing to tourists for the benefit of our economy, the benefit of the city. They struggle themselves to pay rent and find housing. And the city, in our view, has done an excellent job with the proposal before you tonight in recognizing that we're in a crisis so bad that people are being driven to homelessness. We desperately need more housing. It'd be crazy to allow houses to be turned into hotels. It's not what they're there for. The proposal before you is an excellent one. It would preserve housing, and we urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
Kyle Circle, please.
Mr. Circle, you have the floor.
Yes. Yes, my name is Kyle, and we have our primary residence in the city of Costa Mesa. And with the proposal that has been put before you, considering a primary residence as 9 consecutive months out of the year to be able to short-term rent it, while a member of the family is not there. The concern around the home sharing terminology is that under somebody being there, that can obviously pose certain risks to the city versus somebody being in the home with proper security cameras and noise monitoring systems. What I think is most important to be considered tonight is that these primary residences or secondary homes are not affecting the housing crisis, because these are homes that would not otherwise be sold or rented. They would just sit vacant, and their primary purpose is not to be rented full time. Their primary purpose is for housing for my family. But rather than sitting vacant when potentially traveling anywhere from 60 to 90 days of the year. That doesn't happen in a consistent time for a number of days. It would happen sporadically. And so I just want to encourage you to consider the factors of how it's impacted families who have been able to keep these homes and have been here for a decade. The real issue is investor properties. So this previous decision was made in such a way where it threw the baby out with the bathwater. There was a select number of houses that were all related to investor properties that were non-owner occupied properties, and that affected everything in the whole city. And so if you're going to carve out something, carve out that it's a primary or secondary home, because I care about my home, I care about my neighbors, and I care about the city, and it's a fantastic economic impact to the city that doesn't have enough housing. Again, just would encourage you to consider some of the language, which I'm happy to work with the city on, because it doesn't properly communicate what is necessary for homeowners that pay taxes and that live in the city to be able to earn some extra income and offset mortgage and other expenses and improvements for their property. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, anybody else on Zoom?
No further speakers.
Okay, let's close public comment, and then I suppose we'll just entertain a motion at this time.
I'll move to approve the staff recommendation.
Okay, motion by Mayor Pro Tem Marr and seconded by Councilmember Chavez. Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything you want to say regarding your motion?
I do. So about a year ago, I did a deep dive into this issue, and we really wrestled with some of the definitions mentioned by the previous speaker. This was really a question of balancing interests across the city. And as Ms. Lee indicated, given the pandemic, given what's going on with the housing shortage, the most prudent thing to do with the time was certainly to step back and say, how do we write an ordinance that makes more sense for what we're trying to accomplish? Let's just pause on all of it, frankly, was the original proposal. And after we made that proposal, there were a number of people who came back and said, actually, this is the circumstance. I'm in the home, we rent out a room, these tend to be longer term people, we have controls. And I was actually really surprised by how many of the Airbnbs function in that manner. And so we sort of carved those out of the moratorium and said, okay, that one case seems okay, but we still feel like we need to press pause on what's happening right now. And so, I am very confident that sometime next year we're going to come back with an ordinance that actually collects taxes, right? These are effectively hotel rooms that are not taxed like hotel rooms, where we're allowed to, on an annual basis, regulate, inspect, identify problems, frankly, pull permits from people who are not good actors in the city. And so this is still a temporary measure. That's why it's a moratorium. We will come back and we will have a more comprehensive suite of regulations that we can have a conversation about as a community. There's a group of folks that contact me every couple of months and say, hey, what's the update? What's the latest on short-term rentals? Please reach out to me if you'd like to have that conversation. But I think it's the most prudent at this time with everything else that we have going on to just continue to maintain that pause right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Chavez, you seconded the motion. Do you wish to speak on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Marr, for the good background context of how we got to this exact wording of the ordinance. I will just briefly comment that reason why this came up in the first place was a number of us on the dais, I think myself, the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Member Reynolds, all had residents calling us consistently about these party houses. That was the original reason why we pushed this moratorium. And as Mayor Pro Tem Marr mentioned, the more we realize, the more we learn and talk to residents who were doing it properly, who weren't being a nuisance to their neighbors in the community, we carved out the right, I think, the right types of operators that would still ensure a high quality life in Costa Mesa. So I think this is a good ordinance. I'm very happy we're continuing it. And I'm very happy, more importantly, that for streets like Townie Street in my district, we were able to stop nuisance houses that were really disrupting their quality of life.
Thank you very much. Next up in the queue is Councilmember Jeffrey Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to also echo the comments of Mayor Pro Tem Marr. I think she really captured how we got here. I just want to comment on the fact that I believe the urgency ordinance actually has been working. I know I had one nuisance house in my neighborhood. A number of residents were very concerned about the number of parties that were going on there. The owner at the time was in direct violation of our moratorium, and as a result of code enforcement's diligence, that property owner ended up selling the house, and I believe we actually have a long-term tenant or the owner actually there now. And obviously the neighbors are pleased with that. I mean, that speaks more to code enforcement, but I do want to recognize that we will be coming back to look at some of the issues that were raised, at least during that initial conversation. I still think there are a few lingering issues that we need to at least resolve in some way. I'm perfectly happy with the ordinance as is. And I will note there are two conditions during this pandemic that have not changed. We still have a housing crisis, and we still have a tourism industry that was decimated and is coming back. So I want to make sure that we protect those interests, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you. Excellent comments. Now, Councilmember Arliss Reynolds.
Thank you. I echo everything already said. I know there's frequently a number of questions about the short-term rental status in Costa Mesa, so I'm really happy, been sort of searching online here, and I'm really happy to see our FAQ page on short-term rentals and the status in Costa Mesa. I'm sure you'll be updating those FAQs with sort of dates and tonight's action. I'm hoping we can add two things to that FAQ sheet as well, or web page as well. One, touching on, what is the future of short-term rentals in Costa Mesa? So explaining that we are sort of undergoing this sort of a process of figuring out the long-term sort of STR situation. And then providing an email address for people who have input on the process to share that input with our team as you guys develop the proposed plan going forward. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, I don't see any other council members who wish to speak in the queue. I support the motion. I agree with what everybody said. I don't think I could say it any better. Let's call for the question.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right, well done. So then we move to our final business item, which is our first public hearing number one. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title?
Yes, this is extension of two urgency ordinances entitled An Urgency Ordinance of the City of Costa Mesa to extend and amend Ordinance number 2020-15, temporarily suspending the permit requirements and development standards for outdoor activities and parking contained in the zoning code applicable to dining patios, places of religious assembly, and waiver of valet parking, and declaring the ordinance to be an emergency measure to take effect immediately upon adoption. The next one is an urgency ordinance of the City of Costa Mesa to extend and amend Ordinance number 2020-16 of the City of Costa Mesa, temporarily suspending the permit requirements and development standards for outdoor activities and parking contained in the zoning code applicable to retail sales and service businesses, and declaring the ordinance to be an emergency measure to take effect immediately upon adoption. Thank you. Presentation by Ms. Lee.
Ms. Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. The item before you is the extension of urgency ordinances pertaining to certain outdoor activities. In the way of background, the City Council adopted two ordinances in 2020 aimed at reducing the potential social and economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic to our local businesses. On June 2nd and June 21st, 2020, Council approved these ordinances for 6 months, and they waived certain requirements which allowed for outdoor dining, retail, and other similar uses on a temporary basis. On November 4th, the City Council extended those urgency ordinances for 1 year to expire on December 31st, 2021. The intent of the ordinances was to allow for certain outdoor activities while indoor activities were restricted due to the COVID-19 public health orders and also to help buffer the economic impacts of COVID. The state of California recently issued the Beyond Blueprint order and declared that California must remain vigilant against COVID and its variants. So to respond to the continued need for outdoor options due to COVID-related risks, as well as to buffer the secondary economic impacts of COVID, staff is recommending this evening that the council find the ordinances exempt from CEQA and extend the 2 ordinances for up to 1 year to expire on December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Staff, do you have any questions of Ms. Lee? Sorry, City Council, do you have any questions? Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Ms. Lee, I think I can say unequivocally that most Costa Mesans very much enjoy the outdoor dining that we've had here. It's really been a boon to the economy and also just finding a place of comfort during the pandemic. However, it's not been without its challenges. Certainly some businesses seem to have had some or greater impacts on the neighborhood. So what I want to know is what can be done under this ordinance and what is staff doing to resolve some of the issues, namely parking impacts?
Sure. So one of the things I think that we've seen in the community is an increase in sort of the appreciation for alfresco dining opportunities. But as part of that, we've also seen, as restaurants come back, for example, an increase in that customer base. And the outdoor dining provisions of these ordinances have allowed a little bit more enjoyment of our outdoor dining opportunities. So what we've seen with that is some parking impacts that go along with an increase in customers. We've seen customers parking on city streets, for example, and although it's public street parking, anytime we discuss public street parking in a community, it's always a push-pull between the different demands for street parking in the community. So that's been the primary impact of some of these outdoor dining establishments. What we've done in response is really a couple of things. First, we have our code enforcement task force for specifically responding to complaints related to outdoor dining. And we've taken really 2 approaches. The first is really to talk to business owners and employers about what I like to call good neighbor policies. And although those may not be sort of codified requirements, I think we can all relate to what they are. Certainly having business employees, for example, making sure to park nearby the business or in the parking lot, and as well as continuing to communicate to business customers the parking options that are specific to a business. So those are some of the things that we've been doing, and our options under this ordinance are really the same as any other when we issue an approval. And I'd like to call your attention to this slide up on the screen now. One of staff's recommendations is to modify the ordinances to include language that allows for the director, myself, the discretion to revoke or modify approvals for outdoor activities in certain circumstances. And I have here some suggested language that staff would like to ask the council to include in its motion to be added to the ordinances. And really, this is authority we believe I already have, but this is just to ensure it's clear as part of these urgency ordinances that I do have the ability to modify or revoke any approval that was issued under this ordinance previously, for example, to ensure compatibility with neighborhood conditions. So that's staff's recommendation this evening. And then our final recommendation to council, just given the benefits of outdoor dining that we've seen and some of the community comments and council comments over time, is to ask staff to come back to the council next year and recommend specific, more permanent provisions that would help facilitate outdoor dining in appropriate locations in Costa Mesa. So that's our recommendation this evening.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a question for, oh, sorry, were you done? Yeah. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Marr has a question as well.
Could you expand on what those permanent provisions might be?
Sure. So I think what we've seen is that there are places that outdoor dining can be very appropriate. For example, when a restaurant has sort of an interior courtyard or a space that's directly adjacent to its dining facilities, that isn't, for example, covering parking spaces or creating sort of an undue impact. I think those are a very low-hanging fruit for places that outdoor dining could be very successful. So those are some of the provisions that we think would be more permanent regulations. Right now, we require a minor conditional use permit for any outdoor activity. And that has a cost and a timeline associated with it. It's subject to zoning administrator approval. And we think there's probably a way to identify some of these the more low-hanging fruit that could be permitted in a more expedited way. And then we'll still identify a process that has some city review associated with it for those locations where outdoor dining may be a little bit more of a compatibility question. So those are some of the more permanent provisions that we're thinking, but the goal is to facilitate outdoor dining in appropriate places, reinvigorate our streetscape, kind of connect to that pedestrian environment that we're all enjoying at the moment.
Maybe I can make this in my comments since these are recommendations, but I'm just wondering about sort of two things. So one is we've gotten a lot of comments about the outdoor music that has come with outdoor dining, and in many cases that completely makes sense, and there's been significant investment put into creating spaces where that is, doesn't bother the neighborhood and it's making the business more successful. And then the other part of that is just the mechanics of the process. You mentioned minor conditional use permit. Many of these things we would require either a CUP or separate minor conditional use permits for, or additional ministerial approvals. And so finding ways in which we can consolidate those to sort of be an expedited process is something that I would hope is also under the very broad umbrella of permanent provisions.
I think our goal is to look at ways to streamline appropriate outdoor dining. That's the goal. So
Okay.
I think your recommendation would fall under that umbrella.
Thank you.
All right, terrific. I don't see any more questions in the queue. I'm going to open this up to public comments. So now it's time to hear from the public, and if you're in the chambers, you get 3 minutes to speak. I don't think our little 1-minute bell is going off, so what I'll do as an added service is I'll hand up I'll hand up one finger, and then you got 1 minute, and then after the 1 minute, your time is up. Okay, ma'am, you have the floor.
1 minute?
You have 3 minutes. Hold, stop her.
Okay.
You have 3 minutes, and I'll give you the 1 minute signal.
Thank you. I started out in Europe. I come from an international background. So by the age of 10, I was fluent or conversant in 4 languages. Ended up as a high school language teacher. And every summer, I took kids, French kids 1 year and German kids the next, to Europe. The street life in the main cities in Europe, in the small towns in Europe, was exhilarating. My students literally ate it up. I recommend that Costa Mesa become one of these vibrant street life cities that attract people from all over California or all over Southern California to enjoy the street life. Our streets belong to all of us. They are public property. They belong to pedestrians, cyclists, partygoers, restaurant lovers. I support including and continuing the streeteries that is before you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I also want to support this. I think streeteries are good for local small businesses. I think Costa Mesa residents enjoy them. I think they're COVID safe. Yeah, I really don't see much of a downside. What I will kind of add, and some nuance to my comments, is I think they do give an advantage to existing businesses. So I want to make sure that we can do whatever we can to have any new restaurants, for an example, have the ability to have a streetery if they were to open up. So I would just encourage us to think about that nuance in the future. But overall, I actually would. I also, not only do I want to support this, I just want to say, like, I really don't think we should oppose this in any way, because then we would, Costa Mesa businesses would be at a disadvantage compared to other cities that do have streeteries. And, you know, in a cutthroat restaurant environment like Orange County, I think that would be really hard to be doing to our local businesses. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Sir, you have the floor.
Hi there, Dan Bradley, resident and business owner here in Costa Mesa. I just want to speak on behalf of other restaurants and businesses that have really benefited, actually saved us entirely through this past 18 months. Without those additional patios, we would not be in business. And I just want to also clarify that, you know, those patios have saved us, but they also haven't been in full use like we hoped. The Delta variant kind of, you know, put a kibosh on that a little bit, and then now we're having staffing challenges, and it's just, so we really haven't got full use of what those patios can bring, and we're just hopeful that the council will approve that and let us utilize that to its fullest at some point. One thing I'd say is perhaps, you know, she mentioned European cities. I think of Amsterdam, I think of the bicyclists. You know, this city has great weather, this area, Southern California. It's a shame that we don't see more people on bikes, and potentially that could help offset the parking problems. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, you have the floor.
Hey, my name is Tim Tabor, 20-year resident of Costa Mesa and recent owner of Dick Church's restaurant. And this place looks great. I haven't been here in a couple of years. The chambers look nice. I remember those massive TVs from the 1950s that used to hang out, and now it looks so good. So well done, except that Councilwoman Reynolds does not have her name on the little screen. So I don't know if you can do a Fonzie and just make that appear or whatever. Hey, thanks so much last year for the grants that went out to small business and specifically restaurants. That was incredibly helpful to pay bills, to pay staff, to keep the thing going. Thank you so much for acting quickly to get the temporary patios going. The process was incredibly easy. Like literally like an email and a reply and done. And that, like Dan said, was such a lifeline to our restaurant to when we weren't allowed to have people inside, to have diners outside. Really, we were able to keep people employed and we were able to keep the restaurant going. And, you know, honestly, some of the times when it got a little stricter and it was like takeout only, we just couldn't make it work. Like we couldn't even pay the labor costs, much less any overhead. We just couldn't keep the place open. So the patios truly were a lifeline to, I know, our restaurant and many restaurants around the city. So I really hope that you can extend this policy. One note on what Dan said, we've also seen a ton of local neighbors riding bikes. Like it's not uncommon at a restaurant to see a dozen bikes lined up, parked there. But also like people walking dogs, strollers coming in. And I think these outdoor patios are inviting that. You know, there's something about this outdoor atmosphere that really lends itself towards the community coming together. We are one of those restaurants that are doing live music in the outdoor space that has been a real source of community and people coming together. So at any rate, thank you, and I hope that you will please extend this outdoor policy, and I'm looking forward to, if you need my input on the permanent policies and things like that, love to give my 2 cents and help out. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who spoke in the chambers. Great feedback. Who do we have, if anyone, on Zoom?
We have nobody, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll close public comment, and I'll entertain a motion on this item. So a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Marr, and then seconded by Councilmember Chavez. Can you just state your motion, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, we're on our roll tonight there, Manny.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I move that we extend the urgency ordinances 2020-15 and 2020-16 for 1 year to expire on December 31st, 2022, and that we direct staff to return to the City Council with specific recommendations to allow for and incentivize outdoor dining and similar activities on a more permanent basis.
Mayor Pro Tem Marr, may I ask a clarifying question? Does that include the additional language that the director asked to be included?
It does. I was trying to summarize it by using the staff recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, and that's, you second that, Councilmember Chavez?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Now, if you have something to say about your motion, please do.
I do. Sorry, I didn't expect to talk so much tonight. Okay, so similar to the previous motion, you know, it's not permanent. We're going to come back next year, and when we come back, we absolutely, Mr. Tabor, there you are. We want your input. Like, there's a lot more work that we need to do. I think this has been an overwhelming success for businesses, proving that we can do all this stuff outdoors, proving that people really do want to walk and bike. My whole world is colliding right now because the last time I met with Ian Stevenson, I walked to Dick Church's. So there you go. I think that, yes, there have been a couple of places where we've had issues with parking, but the vast majority of places we have not. People have found ways to walk and somehow get there. And so one of the things that I've heard is that by extending the outdoor dining, we are effectively doubling or tripling the restaurant space in some places, which means we should be doubling or tripling the parking requirements. And that is a debate that I absolutely can't wait to have next year, because I do not think that's true. I think we've managed to add all of this additional space without severely impacting neighborhoods in most cases. So absolutely, I understand you have the discretion to figure out which places don't make sense, and so that needs to be part of our consideration for next year. But we absolutely need to continue finding ways to streamline these processes to make them easier for businesses to do the wonderful things that you all are doing, including live music, and including encouraging the neighborhood to really come out to support their local businesses. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for sticking with it over the last couple of years. It's been a journey, I know, but I am incredibly grateful that we've got establishments like yours. So keep it up. Thank you.
Councilmember Chavez.
Thank you, Mayor Stevens, and again to the audience. This is the joy of working with Mayor Pro Tem Marr. Always gets all the points concisely out there that I want to say. But what I will say is this: as we look forward to the future of Costa Mesa, right? That's something I always try to look at. What is the future we want to paint? I know I want to paint a future Costa Mesa that's a lot more friendly to pedestrians, a lot more friendly to people to walk somewhere or bike somewhere and feel secure, and know they're going to a cool little hidden spot out in the open. And this is a step in that direction. As we look forward to the housing element and other factors, this is a key component to that. I think Dick Church is a great example of how one small thing can really enhance a staple of Costa Mesa. And I look forward to seeing staff come back with a recommendation a year from now, when we're more able to digest fully, deeply. But I think it's a great step to making a better Costa Mesa.
Okay, next in the queue is Councilmember Harlan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's deja vu again. Thanks for your comments, Mayor Pro Tem Marr and Councilmember Chavez. I agree with everything that's been said. What I do want to add, though, is what I've really enjoyed about this is that the property owners haven't just thrown together tables and chairs and put up a couple lights. There's been some genuine, deliberate thought about how to create a good outdoor environment. And so now the discussion in my family when we want to go out is not just, where can we go outside, but who's got a really nice outdoor place? And that makes a difference. That helps develop our public realm. It encourages biking and walking. And that's, changed the dynamic here. And I think we're we've had some successes. There's certainly going to be a few wrinkles to iron out, but like Mayor Pro Tem Marr said, I welcome having a discussion about developing a permanent ordinance. I don't see this stopping anytime soon, and I suspect too that the parking issue is not going to be as important, or at least I would say on balance. I think that we get more by having these outdoor spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reynolds.
This conversation makes me very happy. Thank you for this staff report and recommendation. Agree with everything I've heard. I think this has been a really great success, and I'm coming from spending a week in New York City, and let me just tell you, it's beautiful to walk down a street and see people gathered, in a safe environment, but just people out. I think it does a lot of good for businesses in terms of their kind of standard business. They have space to grow and more people to serve, but it also encourages the walking and biking. It creates a positive sort of feeling in community. Even if I'm driving home and I see people outside, it naturally makes me happy to see people, and I think that has a lot of effects. I think people have discovered restaurants that they weren't aware of because of this outdoor dining, right? So it's this form of advertising that has a really positive benefit as well. So I did want to say, I appreciate the sort of request to have some discretion to revoke a permit if needed, and I support kind of providing that lever for kind of cooperation by a business if there are problems. But I do want to express that I would hope that we sort of try every lever to address those problems. We have businesses, working with valets, providing discounts for walking and biking. This is something we can discuss as part of our parking study as well. I know one of the recommendations from that is to have some more permit protections in areas that might be residential areas that might be impacted by commercial activity. So I hope that we will pursue every avenue to allow as much outdoor dining where restaurants feel like they benefit from it, and it provides that positive value to community. But I'm excited about this. I probably do more of my dining at places that have outdoor dining now because of this measure. So certainly support. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely in support of this, and I just want to thank everybody who spoke. Great comments, especially Dan Bradley and Tim Tabor, who are two of the really stars in our community, and not just a restaurant community, but in our business community. And thank you for also your service to our recovery team during the depths and the deep, dark pandemic. And you have given a lot of good feedback, and you were there for the community when we needed you. And I will say, that there's really nothing better in the world than singing Brown Eyed Girl at Dick Church's. And there's nothing better than having gumbo at Memphis. So thank you guys. Thank you for your service. Thank you for being here. Thank you to all the restaurant owners, and you just represent them. But there are so many, and I could name them, a lot of them. I won't. But if they would have showed up tonight, I would have named them. But you guys have made it through a really tough time, and it's such an important part of our community. And as all the council members said, the life, the walking, the biking, the living in beautiful spaces outdoors in Costa Mesa and eating great food. Yeah, it's like Europe, right? Flo Martin, it's wonderful. It's better than Europe. It's Costa Mesa. Let's call for the question.
Mayor, please vote. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. We don't have any more business items. Council members, is there anything that you want to say in terms of something that you wanted to say earlier that you didn't get a chance to express? Okay. In that case, then, we will adjourn the meeting on behalf of Oscar Santoyo. I asked that we adjourn the meeting in memory of a Costa Mesa native, an Estancia High School alumni, Oscar Santoyo. On Sunday, October 24th, at the age of 57, Oscar died of injuries sustained after a motorcycle accident in Arlington, Texas. Oscar was a trailblazer in the youth nonprofit sector, serving as the first executive director at Save Our Youth. At the midst of the city's rise in gang activities in the mid-1990s. He was a man who led with his heart and dedicated himself to our city's youth as a big brother, a mentor, and a leader. His commitment to our community empowered many generations of Costa Mesa families to thrive for a greater future. Oscar will be remembered for his immense love for his two sons, his family, and his compassionate support to our Costa Mesa youth. Please keep the Santoyo family in your thoughts and prayers. Amen. We're adjourned.